Hey guys, it's Sabby Sabs. I am back. I hope all of you guys are doing well. Yeah, so I hope everybody is trying to deal with all this election stuff like as well as you can. I know like people wanted results and answers like right away, but realistically with all the mail-in ballots, I knew that we wouldn't have an answer on election night. In fact, if you go back and you watch my election video called Election Day 2020, I actually talk about that. I mentioned the fact that you're not going to have a result on election night, and anybody who thought that they would have a result on election night was basically just kidding themselves. We usually, like anytime during a presidential election, all the votes aren't counted on election night anyway. So the fact that we had mail-in ballots added on to that, I feel like people should have known better, you know? So it's crazy. I do know that, now they're trying to say, Trump is trying to say there's voter fraud and all that kind of stuff. And it's like, with no evidence, just gets on TV and says things that are, to make those kind of assumptions is just very dangerous. Not only is it dangerous, but it's irresponsible. And honestly, I felt like it made him look pathetic. Like, it just makes you look like a sore loser at this point, man. Like, let me keep something very real, okay? So he brought up the polls. And when he was speaking, he said, well, the polls were a part of the plot, I guess, to cheat or whatever. Let's all remember, okay, for the past couple months, Biden has been leading at the polls. For the past couple months. It wasn't like this just happened out of nowhere, okay? Yes, can polls be wrong? Absolutely. But remember in 2016, the poll said that Hillary was in the lead, that she was going to win. Obviously, Hillary did not win. Did he have a problem with the polls then? No. He only has a problem with the polls when he's losing, because it affects him, because he's not winning. Like, people like freaking out and talking about violence and all that kind of stuff. Again, it's stupid. It's irresponsible. Like I told you guys, like in my election video, like I wasn't crazy about Biden either. But after everything that happened with COVID and the George Floyd and all that stuff, and the president like refusing not to condemn white supremacy, I was like, no, I'm not going to write in Bernie. I still love you, Bernie. I'm going to write in Biden because Trump has to go. And I think that he refuses to accept that. Days ago, Trump said that if he lost, that he was going to say it was voter fraud. And he also said that he would not leave peacefully. So this was all a plan. This was all a part of his plan. Let me make something very clear here. Mail-in ballots or not, if he lost, he was going to do this anyway, because he could not accept the fact that people want something different. People are tired of the divisiveness. They're tired of the president of the United States getting on TV making false claims. They're tired of the fact that he did not handle this COVID situation well. No, he didn't cause COVID, but he knew about it back in February. Now, let me tell you how things could have played out very differently. Before COVID happened, I said that Trump was probably going to win again. After COVID, and with the police brutality and all of that craziness at the same time, I still felt like Trump could have won again, depending on how he chose to respond to those situations. That was actually a good opportunity for him to, when he knew about COVID back in February, to say, all right, guys, check this out. We got this virus here, but don't worry about it. This is what we need to do to stay safe. We're going to wear masks, we're going to do social distancing, and we're going to help kick this thing, okay? That's step one. Step two, when the George Floyd and all that stuff happened, and all the protests were going on, for him to hide, and he's the president, and people are burning cities down, and he's not doing anything. He hid for days. He made no announcement for days, and people were just, losing their cool, right? Can't say the word I want to say on here. So But he didn't. He didn't step in and stand up for the people who have, been oppressed like in this country. Then he had another chance to turn it all around, and that was during the first debate when they asked him if he condemned white supremacy. All he had to do was say yes. He couldn't even do that. So there were 3 opportunities that he had where he could have done those things. And to be honest with you, had he done those things, especially with the COVID situation, he would have been probably considered a hero. If he would have notified about that COVID situation back in February and said, this is what we need to do to kick the virus and to get it up out of here, and then we contained the virus in this country, he would have been considered a hero. But no, he had to make it political. It's the stupidest thing like I've ever seen, So there's that issue with it. That being said, with the way the votes are going right now, okay, or the count is going right now, this should not be surprising to anybody who has been paying attention to politics and the news in the past 2 weeks. Trump went on television and told his people to vote on election day. So what did they do? They voted on election day. That is why the majority of the mail-in ballots are Democrat. So anybody who was paying attention to the news, or anybody who can add 1 + 1, common sense is going to tell you if the majority of Republicans vote on election day and the majority of mail-in ballots were going out to registered Democrats, then that meant that the results coming in first, if those results are the election day results, it is going to look like Trump is in the lead. We had already been told about this. Bernie talked about this on the Tonight Show. Other news people talked about this. But then come the mail-in ballots. So if the mail-in ballots are counted after the election day voting results, or the election day votes, that means that then you are going to start to see Joe Biden's count increase. I don't even know how else to say this. This is basic common sense. It's like if you have a bowl of cereal and there's no milk in it, and then you add the milk and the cereal actually starts to rise. That's what happens. So for people who are now saying that like this is fraud because Joe Biden is pulling in the lead in Pennsylvania, first of all, it's his state. Joe Biden is from Pennsylvania, so you got to keep that in mind. He won his hometown in Pennsylvania, and yes, he is leading in Pennsylvania right now. But another thing to think about too is that yes, Trump did flip Pennsylvania red when he ran against Hillary, but Pennsylvania had been blue. So I don't know why people are acting like this is some like, oh my God, Pennsylvania, I can't believe it turned blue. You got Philly, you have all these different things at play that added to that. But Pennsylvania prior to Trump Hillary was blue. So just that's something to take into consideration. Another thing that I want you all to think about is what could have caused, Joe Biden has the most votes in presidential history. What could have caused that? So one of the things that could have caused that was we had record voter turnout this election. Record voter turnout. More people voted in this election than any presidential election in history. They have been saying that since the early voting started, right? So when early voters came out, they were like, whoa, they're breaking records here, right? That's one thing. The second thing, the African-American vote. African-American voter turnout was significantly high, especially in places like Philadelphia and Detroit and Atlanta. Said this years ago, if everyone who is African-American that is eligible to vote in Georgia came out and voted, Georgia could easily turn blue. I have always stood by that, especially having lived in Georgia. I knew that that could happen. The problem is is there was a lot of voter suppression in Georgia, and we saw this last election with Stacey Abrams, and I forget the guy's name that she was running against, but voter suppression had been a problem for a long time in Georgia, and Stacey Abrams chose to tackle that, and so that helped a lot. But African Americans came out in record numbers to vote for Joe Biden because the way that Trump handled the racial situations in this country with police brutality this year and the COVID epidemic, and just in general, some of the statements and things that he has said about African Americans. When we look at COVID, which community was hit the hardest with COVID? African Americans. Why are you surprised that we came out to vote? Our community was hit the hardest. So that's something you need to keep in mind. I think people really need to think about. But the fact that we came out in record numbers this time, just like we did with Obama, that should be a big statement to anybody who is taking political office in this country. Joe Biden cannot win without the African American vote. No Democrat can win without African American vote. That is how the Democrat candidates win. So if you want to win and you're a Democrat, you do need us to win. And now, I told you I wasn't excited about Joe Biden. I wasn't. But I wasn't trying to keep Trump either. And I think that's the thing that people need to realize. How was my life? What was going to change if Trump stayed president 4 more years? What was going to change for African Americans? What was going to change for women? I thought about how they rushed that Supreme Court justice pick. That was considered an emergency after RBG died, but it wasn't considered an emergency to help out these communities that are struggling and suffering because of COVID. They couldn't even push out a second stimulus for all these people who lost their jobs and have been furloughed in this country. That was put on hold. That was not considered important. But what was important was to rush that Supreme Court justice pick. So your actions, it really tells people what you really feel and that you don't care about them. And so if people feel, especially Black people, if we feel that you don't care about us, we are not going to come out and support you. So that's my rant on that. In reference to this whole ballot counting thing, look, again, we had record voting turnout. A lot of people voted. I'd rather for people to take their time and count these ballots and get them right than to rush it and screw it up. Okay? Now, that being said, Trump is trying to challenge this. Oh, they're cheating, yada, yada. But let's be clear here. If it was the other way around and it was Joe Biden who was doing this, Trump supporters would be livid. They would say, oh no, Trump won fair and square. How dare you try to tell us to recount? This is the thing that kills me. And that's why I go back to this whole two-party system. People say well, we can't have abortion because of morals. It's a moral thing, or it's a racial thing, or it's a social justice thing. But my thing is, when it comes to your party, when it's someone in your party that's doing it, it's okay. And that's one of the things about the two-party system that really bothers me is people will say that they're not okay with a certain type of behavior when the person that's doing it is not a part of their political party. But when the person that's doing it is a part of their political party, they make excuses for it. And I've watched it happen this past 4 years, and it just sucks. It's ridiculous. And honestly, I'm ready for, once they finish counting all these ballots, recount, whatever, I'm ready for this to be over. I want us to have decency back in the White House again. I'm tired of the divisiveness. I'm tired of it's the Democrats' fault. It's the Republicans' fault. Biden came on TV and said, I'm here for all states, not red states, not blue states. I'm here to bring everybody together. I want this country to come together. To me, that's important. And that says a lot. Not the person who's trying to tell you that the Democrats are trying to steal, they're trying to take things and stuff like that. It's, again, Dude couldn't go 1 week without trying to be divisive. So that's how I feel about all this. I hope you guys are hanging in there. One person told me that they had trouble sleeping this week because of all of this. At the end of the day, make sure you look out for yourself and your health, and don't let it get you to that point. But I do think Biden's going to win this, and recount or whatever, I don't think it's going to make a difference. Peace out.